Thank you so much. And now I'll turn things over to Reverend Rachael Ward and the We Think for a Change program.
Thank you. I love that you all want me to have that Reverend in front of my title. I'm so close. And every time I hear it, I'm like, oh, yes, it's coming. I'm in process with the United Church of Christ, but I have lay authorized ministerial standing for this role. But when I get to hear that, it brings me so much joy to my soul. I am Rachael Ward. My pronouns are they, them. I am an activist. I am a scholar. I'm a pastor in no particular order, but I am human first, and I am a child of God always. So I'm super, super grateful and filled with joy to be in this room with you all as representation from the United Church of Christ and as the executive director of UCAN, which is our HIV and AIDS network. And I also work alongside, because of the theme of this week and why we are here, I would like to bring into the room who is with me afar. I also work alongside incredibly talented women who fill the Gender and Sexuality Justice Ministries team that I oversee. So without further ado, I want to also name that I'm so grateful that you preached from that sermon. Women funded Jesus's ministry. Women believed that Jesus had risen. Women believed what Jesus was saying before anyone else would. And Jesus believed women. And women dared to break antiquity, which is a special little biblical word, the history of that time period, to speak out, to act, and subvert what empire was saying. And women were included in ministry and leadership. So I wanted to add that piece because I love the way the Spirit works, and I love that that was what you preached. Thank you for that. So today we're here to uplift the divine feminine. And before we start, I wanted to read a quick piece from Audre Lorde, who is one of my favorites. If I didn't define myself for myself, I would be crunched into other people's fantasies for me and eaten alive. For women, then, poetry is not a luxury. It is a vital necessity of our existence. It forms the quality of the light within, which we predicate our hopes and dreams toward survival and change. First made into language, then into idea, then into more tangible action. Poetry is the way we help give name to the nameless so it can be thought. The farthest horizons of our hopes and fears are cobbled by our poems, carved from the rock experiences of our daily lives. I believe dialogue is poetry. And so I invite you to listen deeply as we journey together in dialogue with Michelle, Tamera, and Naimah, who are here to deliver and weave their own poetry and their personhood to all of you. And because I believe in folks' voices being uplifted, I'm going to let them introduce themselves to you and invite them to share who they are and a little bit about their story as we dive in together.
Hello, can you hear me? Oh, I think I sat in the wrong seat. Anyway, my name is Naimah O'Neal, and I hope that you will come along on my journey. My journey started 31 years ago when I was diagnosed with living with HIV. My journey has been one of sacrifice. My journey has been one of pleasure. My journey has been one of duty to my sister women, duty to myself, and duty to my community. I will share only that I am also a social worker. And so that's part of my duty of giving to people. So I hope that you get out of this to wait, to not faint, to be regalvanized in the work that you do, but to also, like the Sankofa bird, reach back and bring people forward, because we need everyone from the faith community to be involved. And the ones that are not involved, we need to encourage them, not talk about them, because that's the past. And we could really talk about the past and really condemn people for not wanting to be involved in the beginning of the HIV epidemic, but that's not the case. So that is part of my journey, and I will share more as we go on.
Hi, my name is Tamera Garrett. I am 31 years old, from Dallas, Texas. Yes, so I'm a stigma fighting ambassador at all levels. I'm a case manager for a predominantly Black nonprofit organization in Dallas, Texas. So I serve my community. I also am a outreach, testing, name it, I do it. Anything to do this work to let people know that we are greater than stigma. And besides HIV, it's just a diagnosis. It's not the end of life. So what I want people to get out of this is to really come out of fear and live your life in your truth, and not to be based upon economical beliefs and what society says. I believe that I am driven to do this work, and it is a ministry. So therefore, I say what's on my mind as well as speak with my heart, with the due experience of being a young Black woman living with HIV. So what I do is encourage others to live in their truth fearlessly and be the best that they can be, not with waiting on what someone else can do, but be the change you want to see in this world today, not tomorrow. History is history, and we cannot forget our history, because that's what brings me to be so privileged and honored to be here today. Why? I'm on top of the dirt and I'm not under it. So the joy that I have, I love to share that with others so that they too can be strengthened and live a happy, long life, because life is more than good. It's great.
Can you hear me? Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us here this morning. So I'm Jackson Rollins, and I am the founder and director of We Think for a Change. We Think for a Change is an HIV organization. We started about 5 years ago, and we provide opportunities. Thank you. For people living with, we also do food distribution to people that are living with. We have people that are living with at the forefront of all our programs. So our drivers, our delivery, they deliver food to people that are living with. We have quite a few programs, and one of them is Women We Think for a Change, in which we'll talk a little bit more about later. My journey, how I got here, was I retired in 1997 from a major organization and went back to school, and was assigned to a community for my internship. And my first day there on the job was to gather information in different organizations for a rally in the Valley. And this was where people came from all over to Cleveland, Ohio, to Garden Valley, to do door, because they had some of the highest new diagnoses. And so on this day, we had to put door knockers on people's home in the community to so they know their status and ask people to come out and be tested. And so we had women that wanted to be tested, but did not want to go outside of the community. So that started the initiative there, and the rest is history. So what I hope to take from this dialogue today is more ways to add to the work that we're already doing, and to know that these type of conversations get better and become more resourceful in our community, that we can become more resourceful in our community. Because in this work, we all have to work together.
So much. This is a diverse panel coming from all different intersections of experiences in the work, and that's intentional. A part of the way that we carve change is by listening and being in dialogue with one another, and that is how we cultivate new resources or become aware, as our sermon offered, of the resources in the room. So the first question is a good one. I like it. I'm ready. My first question is the theme and the reason why we're in the room. And it's a question that we could be asking wherever we are and where we go back to too. So for those who are in the room and online with us and who are maybe reflecting on the week-long theme as well, what do you want folks to know about the power of Black women's voices, the need for Black women's voices in this fight against HIV stigma? Why is it critical that women are included? Why is it critical that women are called upon to lead? And anybody can answer.
So I think that, first of all, women have always been involved. We just have not been getting the credit that we're due. I also think that we've been working behind the scenes because you can't do anything without a woman. A woman is a nurturer. A woman includes people. A woman is the person who talks and is vocal about things. And she's the nurturer in her family and the nurturer in her community. So to answer the question, I think that I don't want anyone's permission to be involved. Let's say that first. I don't need your permission to do the work that I do. What I do need is your support. And the people that I need the support from are people of faith that are maybe not in this room. I also need the support of our men who are straight, who are HIV positive, who will not stand next to me because they are fearful of people being questioned about their sexuality. And so I think that they need to get over that. And I think that they need to stand in solidarity with their cisgender partners. Because I think in order for, if you are living with HIV and you don't see, or if you want to get tested, but you don't see anyone that looks like you, you're not going to get tested because you don't think that you need to. And so I think that it takes a man also, like it takes a man to raise a family, and it depending on the family that you're in, because we're not going to talk, everybody has different families and different households. But for my household, we need our cisgender men to help us in this fight to end HIV, to support us, not to stand in front of us or to dictate to us or even take the reins, because women have always had the reins. You just need to take your hands off of them and allow us to drive.
Can you read the question one more time for me?
I can. Thank you for asking. What do you want folks to know about the power and need for Black women's voices to be in the fight against HIV stigma? Why is it critical that women are included?
It is very critical for us women to be included. I would say with Black women, we are the #1 impacted by HIV in general. Therefore, women need to be included to know the importance of how to advocate for themselves. As far as of waiting for a man to take charge, and it's this misconception, I would say, that men lead, men do this, men do that. Well, you can't have one without the other. And with even the creation of a woman, we were there to support, to be the backbone. So to have those the voice, you know? So with our voices and being of a nurturing, I would say kind, we're very necessary in the approach. Why? Because we have our own bodies, our minds, our way of thinking. And as an old school saying my grandmother used to say, there's more than one way to skin a cat. So there's not just one way to do things. And it's a two-way street, you know, like what is a man without a woman and vice versa? What is a woman without a man? So there's power there because where I am weak, he's strong. And where he's weak, I'm strong. So it's life has a give and take. And it's not always fair at all. But as the point of it all is that we need each other. And we can't do it without one missing or not showing up and be supportive. So with that combination, with our women, I should say, in general, we have the strengths and capabilities to do things that men can't, and again, vice versa. So I just feel like it's important that women, we are here to show up, to let the importance be known that, I mean, hey, what can you do without us?
So, at We Think for a Change, we started Women We Think for a Change. And what Women We Think for a Change provided women a space that they can come and their story be told without judgment. This is empowering, encouraging, and also it offers opportunities to empower and encourage one another. And the voice is most important for women to be able to share their stories without being judged. And from the camaraderie of each other, we're encouraged to even take it to our community when we're outside of our group, because we know gathering of groups is most powerful when we're and beneficial when we're together. And so we also have retreats where these women come and able to share stories and have a voice and be empowering.
Thank you. Naimah and Tamera, you both are at different intersections of your journey and supporting one another. And because of We Think for a Change, you were able to come into each other's orbit and share and support. I'm curious to hear from both of you, and also Michelle, please feel free to share too. What are some continuing misconceptions or some new arising misconceptions that you're witnessing in terms of gender around Black women's experiences? Or not at all?
I think for me, the biggest misconception still today is that women are not impacted by HIV. That because we hear the numbers from so many other communities, that women must not be involved. And I think that part of that causes a confusion from women who don't know their status, who feel that they don't need to get tested. And that's from Black women. And then it also comes from the healthcare community, because if I'm a white cisgender woman over a certain age, I'm not offered an HIV test. I have a friend of mine who is positive, who almost died because they did every other test that they could think of. And all they needed to do was do an HIV test, and they would have found that she was positive. And so to me, that's the biggest misconception. And I also think another misconception is because people like me are living longer, they think the issue is over. You know, give them a pill, they're okay. We could move on to the next illness. And again, that's a misconception, because you have so many people who don't want to get tested because of the laws and current laws that are in certain states that tells me that if I get tested, I'm going to be subject to those laws. So I think that there are a lot of misconceptions that we could probably have a conversation on each one of them. But I think that what we need to know is that HIV is not gone. We need to become visible again, and we need to share that with our community. And we shouldn't be afraid in our community to step up, because if they see people, women, men, children living with HIV, they know that this is still an issue. So, and I also think that funding dictates what we talk about and what we don't talk about. And I think in our community, it's up to us to keep talking about it, to keep talking about it from the pulpit, to keep talking about it in our communities, to encourage people to get tested, to fight for changing the current laws in people's states so that people will feel free to get tested. And because until we know that line, either you're on the line where you're living with HIV and we get you into treatment, or you're on the line that says that you're negative and we're going to help you stay that way, because sex is natural and we can't control who you're going to have sex with. But what we can do is protect you and teach you how to protect yourself. So I think that I'm gonna stop because I could talk forever. But to me, the biggest misconception is fear and stigma.
I would speak on the misconception of one being that it was behaviors that got me my diagnosis. When the truth of the matter is, as long as I've been diagnosed about 4 years, December the 1st, I make 5 years, it was not behaviors. And people think that it's the behaviors you're doing. You got to be running wild. You got to be doing this. You got to be doing that. No, HIV is a human virus. So if you're sexually active, you're at risk of any STD, STI, or virus that is engaged in relative to sex. So I don't like when people approach and like, well, what did you do or how did it go? Because of, for me and my story of a love life, and sometimes I call it a horror story of love because I love, you know, and if it was love that got me here, I wouldn't redo it for anything. It's love that, you know, love that I live for, and for that love, I'll die a fighting lover, as I would like to call myself. But it's more of the systematic failures, I would say, because with our heterosexual men, it's basically they can't be as sexual exploitive as a woman can be. So women can do things with other women, but men can't do or express comfortably what their sexual pleasures or wishes are. And that is big. Why? Because when they get into systems as far as the prison system, there are a lot of things in there. It's not built for them. It's built up against them, which affects the Black woman, because when they're released to society, then what help do they really have? What help did they really get in there when it comes to testing, when it comes to medication? And we can even go back further. Let's go back to trauma. Trauma is real in our culture, you know, and unresolved trauma leads to hurting people. So how can you expect or set the bar of a Black man who's been institutionalized? How does he know how to have those conversations? He didn't. And then to this day, he probably still doesn't, you know, which leads to anger and outright behavior, which still doesn't justify, but the system is not built for them, you know? So I say that to lead into the conversation of having what is a healthy sexual education topic? Like, what does it look like? From what perspectives? And everything should be all neutral. It should be gender neutral. And for sexuality, it should be neutral. Why? I don't owe any explanation of who I am and what I like if we're not involved and plan on doing anything. So I like to say that those for me and far as my experience, those are some of the misconceptions that people have, or because I have one partner. Well, what you don't know can do more than hurt you, because it could leave you for dead, because it acts differently upon different people's immune system. So I say that to end with, basically, I mean, we have to do better with educating and having the topics and access to talk about sex in schools, at the table at home. Why? Because preparation is the key. Preparation is prevention. And with preparation and prevention, there's no need for cure if we effectively educate and normalize talking about sexuality and sexual behaviors.
That goes to say, increase prevention, decreases intervention. The one of the things that the misconceptions is women are promiscuous, and we know that stereotyping harms, you know. It continues to harm.
Thank you, all of you. So to kind of get us at the intersection of faith and the HIV stigma, and checking my time, we're going to combo pack a question, but you all have thought about it together. I think it's important for folks to be able to hear positive experiences just as much as the negative ones, and to kind of hear experiences that may empower action where they're coming from. So first part of this question is, how have faith communities or a faith leader or a community of spirituality, however that feels with each of you, has held space for you or not, and what that has looked like, felt like, and what that illuminates for you about how faith leaders can hold responsibility in this fight?
Different churches, we have been included with different churches. We do anywhere from 10 to 15 outreach programs a month. We do anywhere from 10 to 15 outreach programs a month. And a lot of them have been in churches, including Mega, and they have embraced, we think, for a change with allowing us to educate and bring awareness into their space, whether it's a health fair, a resource fair, or empowerment event or workshop. This has been rewarding, being able to change the way that they look at HIV. These opportunities we get to do to educate one-on-one. Praise God.
I would say that as far as my spirituality and from a faith-based approach, that I've had full support from organization, which being newly diagnosed and popping up here 4 years ago, changed my life, even to meet Miss Michelle Rollins, who gave me the opportunity to be an ambassador. I say that to say that without her and the help of like my pastor of shedding light upon me with being in a dark place because of stigma and what, you know, feeling of what do others think, how will society handle me, or it really didn't matter at that point, because with God I can do all things, and by his stripes I am healed. And I know that if this has come to me and become a task, that I am more than a conqueror, so that what is for me is for me. So when I took that and looked and checked myself, it gave me the power to be a more accountable individual. And I say that from like taking the time out to do self-reflection, to look at the positive and say, how did I end up here with the diagnosis without being or playing victim? I'm not a victim. I'm a survivor of many things. I am a conqueror. So with that being said, it instilled the joy in my heart to share that with others, to let them know that it is okay and in life is worth living. I'm just so overjoyed. I don't even know if I can even, have the words to express it, but being able to go through that spiritual experience without being judged, and with the solid supporters in my life, let he without sin cast the first stone, and that's none of us. So with the material that I have studied from these conferences and being, I guess, able to have a voice and to be able to sit back and say, hey, no one did this to me. It's just a part of life. And some of the worst things in life will happen to the best of us. Why? Because there is a testimony and we're overcome by our testimonies. And from that, we set others free from whatever it is that they are shackled by. And I love that. Why? Because it was not having an educational session. We're not going to talk about sex. Don't have sex. Other to walking into church and it's like, wow, you want to share your testimony? Like, do you want to tell people about this in celebration of World AIDS Day? You want to get with the youth and have educational sessions with them? My diagnosis opened up that in my church. Why? Because I didn't know anyone around that had been impacted by HIV, but to get the opportunity to be vocal and share that with others, I mean, how can you normalize something if you're not walking in it? And that's what we have to do. We have to eliminate the shame, the guilt, and take accountable and say, well, what was it? What did we lack? Oh, it was the educational piece. It was the fear that our parents had in sheltering us and being overprotective that put me in a situation to where I didn't know I even had control to say, okay, well, let's have this conversation, or know when to have that conversation. So my faith base has been a great experience at all levels.
So my journey is a little different. I haven't always been in faith. I have to, you know what they say, tell the truth, shame the devil. So I was always a spiritual person. And my youth, I was raised as a Muslim. And so when I was 13, 14, I started questioning the practices of American Muslim because it taught us to hate people. And I didn't think that God wanted us to hate people. He wanted us to love people. So then I went on a journey of trying to seek what my spirituality should be. So I went into a lot of different directions. When I got my diagnosis, I felt like God had left me, even though he was with me. That's just the way that I felt. But then I got involved with a UCC church in Euclid called Imani Church of Christ. And the pastor there, first there was a male pastor. And then when he left, my beautiful pastor, Michelle Teagues, Humphrey is her married name now, was so giving and warm and thought that this is something that should be shared, that I was able to share, because I didn't always share my status. I didn't, because I didn't think it was anyone's business. Also, I didn't want to be judged. But then God said to me, Naimah, because of your background, because, I didn't think that HIV was when I saw it on TV, they didn't show anyone like me. So when they told me that I was positive, I was like, what? How could that have happened? Because they never talked about women like me being HIV positive. And so I think that that's my church, to answer the question, was nurturing, very helpful. allowed me to have a voice, was interested in talking about it, because, some pastors are not. And so she wasn't one of those. It wasn't brimstones and doom to her, even though we all have a judgment day. But that's not the reality that she wants to teach. She wants you to make aware of the choices that you make, but she also wants you to know that our God is a forgiving God. Even though people don't forgive, God forgives and he loves. And I try to stay in my lane. I share my story, but my lane is to support and help you. My lane is not to judge you and condemn you. That's God's job. And I think that if we stay in our lanes of loving people and celebrating people and helping people, then that's the lane that God wants us to be in. And I think that if we come from that approach, then I think all the other stuff doesn't really matter, because if you're hungry, God wants me to feed you. If you need clothing, God wants me to clothe you. God wants me to love you. He doesn't want me to do anything else but those things. And I think that we have forgotten that sin is sin, any sin, but we choose to elevate some sins and deflate other sins. But all sin is sin. So if you approach it from that direction, and maybe I'm being, because I've been living with HIV for so long, I just feel like, get over what problem you have, because we need to get to a conclusion with this epidemic. Whether it's a cure or not, we need to get to a conclusion. So if you haven't been involved, get involved as a faith community. If you know of a pastor or a church that doesn't want to talk about it, ask them why. And say, well, maybe you can have pamphlets in your thing. You hide them, put them in plain sight so people can get the education that they need. Put condoms in a place, because believe it or not, kids are having sex. They're not sharing it, but they are, and they're having it at a younger age. So is it okay for them to have babies? Is it okay for them to become positive? Because we don't want to tell them about protection because we think they're going to have sex. They're having sex anyway. So again, oh, good Lord, y'all done got me started. I just feel that enough is enough, and that we come to conventions all the time. We hear beautiful things. We had a beautiful sermon. What are people going to do about this sermon? She preached from Matthew. What are you going to do when you go home to your pastor or to your community or neighboring community? What are you going to do? Because talking about it and philosophizing about it and preaching about it hasn't changed it in 40 years. So what are we going to do that's different? What are we going to do that's going to get us to a conclusion? How are we going to get involved to get to that conclusion? Because we know what to do. We absolutely in 40 years know what to do. Now, what are we going to do with that information that we have? I challenge everyone in this room. What do you intend to do with the information that you will learn from this conference? This is a love letter to women. What are you going to do to support women who will support the community, who will help reach that conclusion?
No, never apologize. No, thank you for that. Thank you. What are you going to do? What's the action? Oftentimes we can get overwhelmed with the choices of action, but it's a simple question of what is the need in the room. Adrienne Maree Brown, who writes the book Pleasure Activism, and Emergent Strategy is also another wonderful book by Adrian. It says that all the things that you need are in the room. So how can you meet one another today, the rest of the day? How can you meet and gather with each other through the week and channel your resources and network together to make action a tangible impossibility in this moment? I'm going to let each of you have one final sentence, if you want to, just so that you have that chance to close out your time here. If there's anything else you'd like to share with those in the room and online.
I like to say that I am not the greatest speaker and panelist, but I am a listener. And that's how I got here, from listening. Been listening from, started off right here at United States Conference back in 2016, listening to Naimah, Tamera, and the community. And all I know how to do is do, and how we can get to the end, how we can end this epidemic. We know that it cannot end without eliminating stigma and discrimination. We have to. And we know that churches have that platform to help. And I love the National HIV Awareness Day, Faith Awareness Day, because that was the day that all faith come together to educate and do what we need to do in terms of eliminating the stigma and the discrimination, because without it, we cannot end the epidemic.
I would just like to say all the resources that we need is in the room. Everything that you need is amongst you at all times. And with that, with my faith and my spirituality has brought me a long way. Because if he said, I will never leave you nor forsake you, he's nothing like man that he shall lie. And it's the truth. And just to be here and be in the presence, I mean, it's here. You're living it. We're in the midst of it. But however, I take pride in being so vulnerable. Why? It's because the person sitting next to you is no different from you. And all the aspects in life, situations and circumstances, we've been there. But if we could be more open and honest with ourselves, we could be more open and honest with the person that's next to us. And it's power. It's power in that. Why? Because if he did it for me, he can do it for you. And even in the midst of the storm, the sun is still somewhere shining. And then we have to realize the rain is only temporary, but it's very necessary for growth. Even with this journey of something, as people would say, a HIV diagnosis, it has grown me and taken me a long way as a human, being affected by a human virus, that I'm able to educate and uplift my brother, my sister, you know, a plane full of people that I don't even know, which I never meet a stranger. And it's all good, but we just have to do better with coming together. As Naimah was saying, solutions. We can talk about it all day long. We can throw the ideas, but what are we going to do with the information being shared? It's time to educate, uplift one another, be there to love and support one another, and come together as a unity. And I'll leave you all with that.
Thank you so much. I would love to challenge each of you to write 3 things down during this day. And if you only get to 1, guess what? That's awesome. 3 things that you can take and act towards. If that's forming a coalition where you are, to think through how you can have conversations within your church spaces, that is awesome. But think and ruminate on that so that we take this information and that we put it into action that we can utilize our minds, our bodies, and our spirits towards. And may it be so. Can we thank our panelists here for their sharing? Thank you so much, all. Thank you.